Question 4 is explain the law of dominance using monohydrate cross. Okay, now we have to explain what law of dominance. That means we have to show that something is dominating over the other thing. With what? Monohydrate cross. Mono means one. We are going to take one specific trait and we are going to show that that one trait, either the height of plant, is dominant for something. Now we start writing by when two contrasting factors or genes are present in an organism. Okay, now there are two contrasting characters. They are present in for an organism. Okay, one of them may mask the presence of the other one. One of them will what? Mask the presence of the other one. For example, in a monohybrid cross between homozygous tall and homozygous dwarf. Okay, now there are two plants. One of them is tall, this is tall, and this is dwarf. When they are crossed together, all the plants formed would be tall. So here, tall is what? Tall trait is dominant in nature. Now, varieties of pea plant. For F1 offsprings, or the hybrid will resemble to the parent, that is tall. But in F2 generation, both the characters of the parents, tall and dwarf, would be present. So, now when all the F1 generation is self-crossed, the plants obtained would be in a ratio where some of them are tall and some of them are dwarf. Okay, so what here we need to say is the F1 hybrids carry the factor for dwarfness, that is T, small t, but it could not express itself in the presence of itself in the presence of the dominant gene. Okay, so factor of tallness. In Mendelian language, a factor which expresses itself in the hybrids is known as dominant. Okay, and the alternative form that fails to express itself in the presence of dominance factor is known as recessive. Okay, now students, keep this in mind. The one which expresses itself is known as tall or dominant. Okay, and the one which fails to express itself is known as dwarf. Now, thus, the principle of dominance states that when two alternative factors or genes come together in an organism, only one of them is called dominant or it is expressed, while the other factor or the gene of the same plant pair is known as recessive or unexpressed or latent. Students, the conclusion here is the one which shows itself is dominant and the other one which does not show itself in the presence of the dominant gene is known as recessive. Okay? Now, going ahead, we have a dominant character is expressed in both homozygous and heterozygous individuals. Okay. However, a recessive character is expressed only in homozygous individual. Okay. Now, Mendel studied inheritance of 7 contrasting characters. So, Mendel studied what? How many characters, students? 7 characters. In each case, he noticed that one form of the character from each of them contrasting pair dominates. Okay, it dominates over the other one and is expressed in the F1 generation, whereas the other one is not expressed or it remains latent or recessive. So students, this is your law of dominance. However, The result of F2 generation showed that recessive characters reappear in a definite ratio. Okay, so they will reappear, but in what ratio? Let's have a look. So in each F2 generation of the experiment, the ratio was something similar to 3:1. So after each 3 tall plant, there would be 1 dwarf plant. Approximately 3/4 of them were tall or dominant type. Okay, students? So now let's look at the cross. Okay. So the parent generation is homozygous tall and homozygous dwarf. Now, gametes here are P and small t. Okay. When this is cross-pollinated, the F1 generation obtained here is all of them are tall, heterozygous tall. Now, when this is cross-pollinated, self-pollinated, we've got a homozygous tall, a heterozygous tall, again a heterozygous tall, and lastly we have a homozygous dwarf. Okay, so tall, 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 and one is dwarf. So all 3 of these will be tall and one is dwarf. So the ratio here is 3:1. Students, this is important. For monohybrid cross, the ratio of phenotype is 3:1, whereas for genotype is 1:2:1. 1:2:1. Okay, this is what, students? Genotypic ratio. Okay. Now, please remember this. Phenotypic ratio is what, student? 3:1. But genotypic ratio, how does the genotype looks like? That is homozygous tall, 2 heterozygous tall, and lastly 1 homozygous dwarf. Okay, students? Clear? So, we are done with question number 4.